Good morning, viewers. This is Professor K.P. Mahapatra. I welcome you to your own channel, your favorite channel, KP Slit Charts. Today, I propose to take up a new area with you, that is formalism and new criticism. Ladies and gentlemen, in our previous video, we have already discussed the evolution of literary criticism vis-a-vis the difference between literary theory and literary criticism. As you all know, literary theory is a tool, is a guideline to analyze the literary texts. So, the literary critic always depends upon the literary theory to analyze and to critically appreciate a particular text. So, the importance of literary theory cannot be discounted. As you all know, the theory of mimesis was introduced by Aristotle, where he said that art is an imitation. Plato also agreed that art is an imitation, but he said that art is twice removed from reality. When Plato said that art is twice removed from reality, Aristotle began to contest it. He wanted to differ with his teacher, Plato, and he said, art cannot be said to be twice removed from reality. Rather, it is the manifestation of reality, it is the representation of reality, it is the portrayal of reality, it is the expression of reality. Unless reality is there, art cannot be produced, nor reality's significance cannot be increased unless art expresses the reality. Of course, art covers a very different kinds of things like literature, painting, fine art, sculpture, architecture, and so many things. So literature forms a very significant part, significant aspect of art, and literature deals with fantasy and realism in a blended form. So literature is the blending of fantasy and realism, imagination and intellect. So when theory of mimesis became very popular, everyone in the literary circle, the readers, the critics, all of them agreed that literature is a mixture, a blending between reality and fantasy. So, and they also considered literature as the art of imitation. So the writer used to imitate the reality, used to represent the reality in his own style. So after that, literary theory became very popular and historical and biographical literary theory emerged. Under the category of this literary theory, that is historical and biographical criticism, the literary critics used to view, analyze and study the historical background of the writer, the biography of the writer, what type of person he was, how did he grow up, where did he have his schooling, what were his parents doing, and what was the condition in which he was living or he was born, the neighborhood, etc., the milieu, the background, the circumstances in which he has grown up, which has helped him grow into a great poet or great writer or great dramatist. So historical and biographical criticism provided a new perspective to the literary critic to visualize, to appreciate, to analyze the text of the writers, and he used to give his own views after making a study of the historical and biographical perspectives. So after this historical and biographical criticism continued for quite some time, there emerged another theory which was a very path-breaking theory and people appreciated it. That was called the formalism or the formalist theory or the theory of formalism. Theory of formalism emerged in Russia. In Russia, the pioneer of formalist school of criticism was Victor Slavsky. So he suggested that before appreciating literature, you have to study the form. More thrust, more focus should be given to the form, the style, the structure, the language, the plot, the character, all those things have to be analyzed first, and the merit or demerit of a critical work, of a critical text is to be judged if the form is okay. If the form is immaculate, impeccable, flawless, then it is okay. So they studied the form and they put more thrust on the style and structure of the poem. What are the images? What are the figures of speech used there? All those things were studied by the formalist school headed by Victor Slavsky. And they did not give much importance to the content. So after this formalist school, which evolved in Russia in the early part of 19th century, it also became very popular and it provided a scope to the people, to the literary critics and to the readers and writers, the perceptive and discerning writers, to study the different stylistic features, the structure, style, plot, character, length, act, scene of the literary texts. After that, in the middle part of 19th century, there emerged in England a group of literary critics. A new literary theory was evolved. A new literary theory became popular in the middle part of 19th century in England. And the pioneers were F.R. Lewis, I.A. Richards and T.S. Eliot. What did they suggest? Formalist school suggested about the study of form. They did not give much importance to the content, but this new criticism or the new critics or the school of new criticism gave importance to both form as well as content. They said that form should be there properly and content should be equally. It should be in match with the form. And in the content, they studied the stylistic aspects, the image, simile, metaphor, paradox, allegory, all these aspects they began to study. But they had one common thing. The formalist school and the new criticism school, they had one common thing. The common thing is close reading of the text. And Victor Slavsky introduced a new concept known as defamiliarization. What is defamiliarization? He wanted to ask the readers to defamiliarize themselves with the authors. Even if they are familiar, they should behave as if they do not know them, as if they have no relation with them, as if they don't have any information about the biography and history of those writers. So they have to defamiliarize themselves with the writers. So this concept of defamiliarization emerged during the formalist school of criticism. When it became popular, people began to defamiliarize themselves and they forgot about the writer's background, history, personal life, love affair, family life, service and profession and other things. They simply confined themselves to the structure of the text, style of the text, language of the text. Language was very important for the formalist school. Language, style, structure, plot, character, length, act, scene, all these things were important for the formalist school. But in case of the new critic school, or the literary critics of new criticism school, they emphasized on both the aspects: form, structure, language, context, style, structure, figures of speech, image, simile, metaphor, symbol, allegory, alliteration, as well as the content. But they also agreed with the formalist school that they should defamiliarize themselves. They never used the term defamiliarization. They said close reading of the text. And they also said that author is dead after the text is created. In this connection, we must remember the article the sensational article published by Roland Barthes named The Death of the Author. The Death of the Author was a wonderful, brilliant article, a very sensational article which was published in 1967, where Barthes declared that once the text is created, once the work is created, the author has no relevance. The author falls into insignificance, falls into anonymity, and nobody bothers about the author. What people bother about is the text. And the new critics like F.R. Levish, I.A. Richards and T.S. Eliot, they suggested that there should be a close reading of the text. Instead of frittering away your energy, instead of talking about the writer's personal life, family life, professional life, friendship, social condition, political condition, his social attitude, cultural background, all those things should never come into picture. What would come into picture? That is the text which he has produced. How seamlessly he has produced the text. What is the essential point of the text? What does the writer want to convey? And in the process, you have to study the literary devices that the writer has used. If it is a piece of poem, the literary devices like simile, metaphor, image, symbol, allegory, paradox, alliteration, all those things are to be synecdoche, hyperlage, all the transport epithet, all those things are found to be used in poetry. And along with that, the content of the poetry or the theme of the poetry is also to be discussed. The theme of the poetry should be discussed from the perspective of the particular age that the poetry was produced, but not the person. They may take into consideration the age. Say for example, in modern age or in today's age, if somebody writes poetry, what does he write? He writes about corruption in public life. He writes about ecological imbalance. He writes about dishonesty. He writes about crimes. He writes about betrayal in love. He writes about separation, alienation in married life. He writes about depression, mental agony, and poverty, malnutrition. All those things. Cyber cheating. In the cyberspace, lots of cheatings are taking place. So deception, hypocrisy, all those things come into picture if somebody writes any kind of literary text in the present day, during the present days or during the present time. So literature reflects the nerve of the society, because Hippolyte Taine, the French critic, had said that literature comprises three veritable and vital aspects. One is race, the other is milieu, and the third one is the moment. So milieu is very important. You have to find out in which milieu, in which background, in which atmosphere, in which age the writer is writing. What kind of inspiration he is drawing and what kind of message he is going to give. Although the writer doesn't convey any message directly, but he indirectly expects that all his views should be taken into consideration and they should be implemented in practical life. No writer appears to be didactic or instructive or preceptive directly. No one wants that. Everyone gives some hints indirectly. Say for example, William Shakespeare was writing during the 16th century Elizabethan age or the age of Renaissance. All his four, classic plays, legendary plays, memorable plays, like Hamlet, Othello and Macbeth and King Lear, they had given wonderful message to the society. Say for example, in Hamlet we get to learn if you become indecisive, you have to face the consequence. Prince Hamlet wanted to take revenge against the murderer of his father. Such a person who is accused of 3 crimes. One is murder, second is incest, third is usurpation. Prince Hamlet's uncle Claudius murdered his father. Murdered his father means King Hamlet in cold blood while he was taking rest in the orchard after the lunch. After murdering his brother, Claudius murdered his elder brother Hamlet, King Hamlet, and married his own sister-in-law, Hamlet's wife. Then another thing he did, he occupied the throne of Denmark, because Prince Hamlet was not there in Denmark. He was studying in Wittenberg University of Germany. So we get the lesson कि if at all you want to take action, the action should be very prompt, should be very cogent, and should be very forceful, serious, and it should be executed in proper time. If you make delay, you face consequences like Hamlet. In Othello, it is sexual jealousy. Jealousy is there, but don't be guided by others' biased views. You should yourself verify the veracity of the allegation. Iago alleged that his wife, Othello's wife Desdemona, is having illicit relation with Cassio. But Othello was impulsive. He was so much driven by jealousy that he went to the extent of murdering his wife, his beautiful wife, loyal wife, devoted wife. In Macbeth, what happened? Vaulting ambition. Macbeth was, persuaded by the 3 witches, predicted by the 3 witches that he is going to take over as the king of Scotland. He didn't have patience. He consulted his wife, murdered Duncan, and occupied the throne of Scotland, and the consequence is tragic death, tragic downfall. In case of King Lear, it is filial ingratitude. 3 daughters, Goneril, Regan and Cordelia. 3 of them loved their father, but Goneril and Regan, they were hypocrites, and when King Lear asked them about their quantum of love, they magnified it, exaggerated it, and gave some hypothetical statement कि Papa, we love you more than ourselves. So the property was distributed among the 2 daughters. Cordelia said, I can't love you totally. I will love my wife once I get married, and I will also love you. King Lear got annoyed and disowned Cordelia, distributed the property between 2 daughters, and you know what happened to his condition, what happened to his life. That was his tragic downfall. So this is how reality is portrayed in literature. And literature, the writer gives some indirect message to the readers, critics, what is to be done. He doesn't say anything directly. So close reading of the text. The new critics suggested you don't have to worry about the life of the writer, background of the writer, profession of the writer, family of the writer, but you have to study the text which he has created, because according to them, author is dead after the text is created. So text is everything. Close reading of the text is important as far as the new criticism is concerned. They simply confine themselves to the analysis and the understanding of the text, appreciation of the text by delinking the author or the writer from the text. So today we will stop it here. I would request all of you to like, subscribe and share the channel KP's Lit Charts. This is your channel. Next time we will meet with a new video. Thanks a lot. Jai Jagannath. Namaskar.